Joining me now to discuss his candidacy and vision for the Democratic Party is that last name, former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley. Governor, let's start at the beginning. Why do you want to run the Democratic Party, and why do you think you're the best person to do it?
Because I love my country, and right now, I think we all have to recognize that the Democratic Party is actually the only thing that stands between the republic we carry in our hearts and whether or not that republic is going to survive much longer. So we have to turn our party around. We have to change to win. We have to do it quickly. And I'm probably about the best operational turnaround leader in our party today. So that's why I'm offering my candidacy. I know we're up for this. Talking to people out here, I know they're up for this battle. So it's time to pick ourselves up off the mat and recover and defend the country we carry in our hearts.
You were elected mayor of Baltimore 25 years ago, governor of Maryland 18 years ago, ran for president in 2016. But there are a lot of Democrats out there who say the party needs new blood. So what would you say to folks who think you'd be just more of the same?
Well, we clearly need new blood. And you know what? We have a lot of great candidates all across the country who are running, winning elections, even though the top of the ticket was not, wasn't a help to them in a lot of the places where they were running. For the last year, was asked by President Biden to go turn around Social Security, which was in danger of heading into a customer service meltdown. He didn't ask me to go there because it was an easy job. He asked me to go there because it was a tough job and because I have the ability to turn around organizations fast. And that's what we need to do. I have the experience, and it's experience that my party has given to me. I have run for election and re-election, as you pointed out, and whenever I did, I always made sure the message was connected to the family's kitchen table economic realities. That's the most important place in our country. And the good news is this change we need to win is really a return to our true selves as a party. But it's going to require not only messaging that's connected to every family's economic reality, it's going to require an operational turnaround. And I have the ability to lead this party out of the darkness.
Well, can't solve a problem without defining a problem. So first, let's double back to what we just witnessed a few weeks ago. Kamala Harris was the first Democratic presidential nominee to lose the popular vote in 20 years. Why'd that happen?
I believe that we got distracted from the core economic fears, anxieties, and concerns of the people that we were offering ourselves as, the party to lead them. In other words, the other guy, Donald Trump, has a twisted talent for tapping into people's fears. I believe that we have to be the party that is actually the party of hope and that engages in the economic arguments. The most effective ad I saw Vice President Harris run, who was did a valiant and courageous job out there, thrust into this role in the short time that she had. But the most important ad was the ones that the consultants ran the least. And that was the ad that talked about the high cost of living, the prescription drugs, and what we were doing to reduce those prices, what we need to do to strengthen and secure Social Security and make it strong for years and years to come.
I take
These
the point.
are issues that concern people, and we didn't talk to them enough. Instead, we talked about defending democracy, which a lot of voters heard to mean defending the status quo, and we talked about reproductive freedom, which if we had people on that issue, we already had them, and there was a lot more people that needed to be persuaded for us to win.
Yeah, but when you talk about kitchen table issues, Harris did talk about, and I'm glad you point out these ads, the cost of elder care, child care, abortion access, which I hear what you're saying, but it is an economic issue. Economists were saying the U.S. economy was healthy, which is why Democrats were touting that. So I guess the larger question is, was the electorate just not listening? Where was the breakdown ultimately?
Well, then we have to do a dispassionate deep dive on how we communicated and where we communicated. First of all, to your point, I believe that those messages that she had were actually effective. I don't think we said those messages enough. I think instead we tried to remind people of what Donald Trump had done on January 6th when he sicked a violent cop-killing mob on our Capitol to disrupt the election count. When what they really wanted us to be talking with them about was the high cost of living, cost of housing, high cost of prescription drugs. So we did some of that, We didn't do enough of that, according to the people I've talked to now from all over the country. The other thing that we failed to do, as well as the Republican Party, was we failed to engage online through the channels and the places where people get their news on social media and from trusted networks and other sources of information. So we need to be better. We had a good ground game, but our Air Force game didn't talk enough about economic issues, according to the people I've spoken to here. And also, we did not have the online game that we should have. In other words, we were knocking on doors in an enormous amount of places with great volunteers. We had a great ground game. But Donald Trump had already been inside those homes through social media channels for months and months. We need to up our game on that score.
Could all of this have been avoided or potentially a different outcome happened if Biden had just chosen at an earlier point not to run again?
Yeah, that's kind of a D.C. parlor game. And I am, look,
but
I'm not running.
But it's a fair question when this is the person at the top of the ticket for voters.
Yeah, it's a totally fair question, but I'm not going to answer it. I mean, I'm here to talk about the future, and I'm leading my party out of this darkness into the future. We can play D.C. parlor games about rolling back the clock and what if. And you know what? None of that matters. The only thing that matters is turning this party around right away, getting it battle ready so that a government of, by, and for the people does not perish from this map. And that's what we're about. That's what the Democratic Party is about. And we're also the party that's going to be seen in a very short order to be the party that's fighting for working people, because the things that Donald Trump is going to do in rapid succession is going to break a lot of stuff and drive up the costs of a lot of stuff. If people thought the price of eggs was bad, wait till they see what the next 2 years has in store for hardworking people trying to get by.
Well, if you become the next DNC chair, you will be in charge of the upcoming 2028 primary process. I can't even believe we're talking about that, but here we are. It's early. What does that process look like to you? What kind of environment do you want to foster? And even the order of the calendar. Should South Carolina stay first?
Yeah, well, that'll be a process that the DNC will have to determine in an open and transparent way. When you talk about 2028 and the next crop of candidates, their success is going to depend on our having a 57-state strategy that rebuilds everywhere, gets people filing for office, recruits candidates in school boards, state houses, and the like. And when it comes time for the presidential campaign and our primary, I think we're going to have a great group of men and women competing. And if I am the DNC chair, I am committed to making sure they all get equal time on that debate stage, that everybody gets a fair shot and a fair chance. And when we have that primary, we're going to come roaring out behind a winner that's going to lead us into many years of better years than this dark time we're in for right now.
I do think that you're right, Governor O'Malley. You're going to have a very large field to contend with if this is your job come 2028. Former Governor Martin O'Malley, thank you for spending some time with us.
Thank you, Allie.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.